So, let's talk about Alcatraz. The Rock. For decades, it was America's most feared prison, a place you didn't come back from. It was built to be completely inescapable. But, as we're about to see, inescapable is a very strong word.
And look, that wasn't just some catchy phrase they threw around. That was the whole philosophy of the place. Alcatraz wasn't about making you a better person. It was about breaking you. It held the worst of the worst, guys like Al Capone and Machine Gun Kelly. It was, for all intents and purposes, the end of the line.
And yet, on a cold June night in 1962, 3 men did the impossible. They vanished from their cells and were never seen again. So that's the big question we're tackling today. In a fortress designed to be the ultimate cage, how in the world did Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers just disappear?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the fortress itself, what they were up against. Then, the absolutely brilliant way they got out of their cells. After that, how they planned to survive the bay. We'll also dig into the prison's own mistakes that made this possible. And finally, we'll dive into that huge, lingering mystery. Did they actually make it?
First things first, you have to understand the sheer scale of the challenge. Alcatraz wasn't just a prison. It was a fortress with layers upon layers of security. We're talking hardened steel, reinforced concrete, and then there was the bay, the most brutal guard of all, the ice-cold, churning waters of San Francisco Bay.
You really have to think about the security in 2 parts. Inside, you have these special steel bars designed to literally chew up and destroy hacksaw blades. You had guards walking the halls constantly, doing 13 head counts every single day. But outside, that's where it got truly deadly. A swim over a mile long in water so cold it could cause hypothermia in just a few minutes, with currents so powerful they could drag a person right out into the Pacific Ocean. It was considered a death sentence.
So where does this wild escape even begin? Well, it starts small. It starts with the very first problem they had to solve: how to get out of a locked concrete and steel box when someone is watching you almost every hour of the day.
And right here, this is the prison's first and maybe biggest secret weakness, the very thing that made Alcatraz so terrifying. That relentless, salty sea air was also its Achilles heel. Think about it. For decades, that salty mist had been seeping into the concrete walls. It was making the steel rebar inside rust, and when steel rusts, it expands. It was literally, slowly tearing the prison apart from the inside out. The unbreakable fortress was rotting.
And this is where the genius really kicks in. Over about 6 months, they put their plan into action. They used spoons, stolen right from the mess hall, and sharpened to chip away at that soft, corroded concrete. To work faster, they literally built their own power tool, a drill made from a busted vacuum cleaner motor they got their hands on. Now, how do you hide the noise of a drill in a quiet prison? You're not going to believe this. Frank Morris, one of the escapees, would play his accordion during the prison's nightly music hour. It was the perfect cover. Then they hid the hole behind a fake vent cover they made out of painted cardboard. Incredible.
Now, to get the time to do all this work, they had to pull off maybe the most legendary trick in escape history. They built dummy heads. They made them out of a mix of soap, toilet paper, and even dust from the concrete floor. And for the final touch, real human hair they swiped from the barbershop floor. They'd put these heads on their pillows at night, so when the guards peeked in during their rounds, they just saw what looked like a sleeping prisoner. This bought them hours of freedom to work in the utility corridor behind their cells.
Okay, so getting out of the cell, that was just problem number 1. A huge one, for sure, but it was only the beginning. They had this secret workshop space up on an unused level of the cell block, but they still had to face the bay. They had to figure out how to defeat the island's most infamous guard, the water itself.
Just think about the logistics here for a second. More than 50 raincoats. 50. They had to steal them or trade with other inmates for them, and then hide all of that material. This massive secret operation was happening right under the guards' noses, and it formed the very foundation of what they hoped would carry them to freedom.
And they weren't just, stitching these things together. No way. They found a popular mechanics magazine, and they basically taught themselves chemical engineering. They learned about a process called vulcanization. They used the heat from the prison's own steam pipes to essentially melt and fuse the rubber seams of the raincoats. See, any normal glue would have just dissolved in the salt water. But vulcanization created a single, seamless, watertight material, a level of technical skill nobody thought was possible inside a prison.
So in this hidden workshop of theirs, they put together the ultimate marine escape kit, a big 6 by 14 foot inflatable raft, life preservers for all of them, and even paddles they made out of scrap plywood. And get this, in a final stroke of pure genius, that same accordion Frank Morris used to hide the drilling noise, they modified it to be used as a bellows to pump air into the raft once they got to the shore. Talk about resourceful.
But look, this story isn't just about how smart and resourceful the prisoners were, it's equally about how the prison system itself failed. Alcatraz had this reputation for being perfect, for being unbreakable, and that kind of arrogance, well, that's where the cracks start to show. It really was a perfect storm of problems. You've got the physical building itself literally crumbling. Then you had the human errors, a utility corridor that nobody bothered to properly secure, which became their personal highway and workshop. You have guard routines that were so predictable the inmates could set a watch to them, relying on just a quick glance into a dark cell. And finally, you have actual architectural blind spots near the shore that the guard towers couldn't even see. The perfect prison was anything but.
And so, on the night of June 11, 1962, it all came together. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers slipped out of the building, shimmied down a drain pipe, inflated their homemade raft, and pushed off into the black waters of the bay. They vanished into the night, leaving behind one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in modern history.
The next morning, when one of the dummy heads fell off a bunk, all hell broke loose. It kicked off one of the biggest manhunts ever, and over the next few days, these little clues started to surface. A paddle here, a wallet there, some bits of raincoat material, but the men themselves, gone. After a massive 17-year investigation, the FBI officially closed the case. Their conclusion, the men drowned in the cold, treacherous bay.
But here's the thing. Even though the FBI closed the case, the story was far from over. You've basically got two camps: the official conclusion that they drowned, and the theory that they actually made it. And honestly, both sides have some pretty compelling arguments that keep this mystery alive and well today.
Now, the case for survival is pretty wild. For starters, later that same year, another inmate actually did make the swim to shore, proving it wasn't impossible. A car was reported stolen that very night, not far away, by 3 men. And get this, modern computer models of the base currents have shown that if they left when they did, their raft could have been pushed safely to shore. And maybe the strangest piece of all, the Anglin family claims they received mysterious, unsigned postcards and flowers for years after the escape.
So in the end, we may never know for certain what happened to the Alcatraz escapees, but maybe that's not the most important part of the story. Whether they met their end in the darkness of the bay, or they actually lived out their lives as free men, their story remains this powerful testament. It forces us to ask a really big question. Is any system, no matter how tough or well-designed, truly unbreakable when it comes up against the sheer force of human ingenuity and determination?